This is the MHFi podcast with Carl Jensen and Doug Cunnington. We have authentic conversations about the journey to Fi, health, happiness, and some very odd tangents. We interview Fi experts, side hustlers, people on their way to Fi, and those who have reached the other side. Join us every week, and if you want the show notes and links and all that other stuff, head over to milehighfi.com.
Hello, world. Welcome to the MHFi podcast. I am Carl Jensen with my co-host.
I'm Doug Cunnington.
And we have two very special guests today. Tell us your names first, and then we'll get into your backstory in a moment.
Jennifer Hafner.
Scott Newkirk.
So, you both have been retired you retired within the past year. You nearly had a gig go bad due to a COVID scare. And I should back up a second. Y'all do house sitting and pet sitting, where you take care of pets in return to stay at someone's house. Can you tell us more about that story?
Sure. We've been doing a bit of pet sitting over the last couple of years when we were working, and then once we quit, and we ended up having an opportunity to come out here to Colorado and pet sit for Georgie, for Doug's dog and Elizabeth's dog. So basically, we're going to drive out to Colorado. We live in Los Angeles area, so we were going to do a road trip.
And a good friend of ours wanted to come out. He has some other friends out in Colorado. He's an artist, and he thought it'd be a great time to just do a mutual road trip, and then we'd drop him off and he'd fly back. So we picked him up, bombed past Vegas, got out to St. George, Utah. And next morning he texts us. He's like, guys, I've been feverish all night. I barely slept, night sweats. I'm feeling horrible, headache, just all the symptoms of COVID.
All the symptoms of COVID, yeah.
And we went over and tested him, and sure enough,
like within minutes, he's positive. And we're like, great, we just spent 8 hours in a car with you. So we were literally trying to figure out what our options are, right? We can't leave him in Utah and keep on going. And then we've obviously been exposed. So we ended up basically deciding we're 6 to 8 hours drive, and we're going to drive him back.
Wanted to get him home where he has his social circle support network and whatnot. But luckily his sister ended up coming up and meeting us partway. So we had driven out past Vegas, went back to Baker past Vegas, and bombed back again past Vegas.
We're Scott was saying, I feel like a drug mule.
Not that we know that.
No. Just going back and forth. But so in basically 5 days before we got here, we tested again, and we tested negative. We're like, okay, we're good. So it was one of those that it was close call, but we masked up on the way back. We stayed as safe as possible. Had the airflow. That was the biggest thing.
You basically had the AC cranked up, the windows in the back down a little bit. So we just had all this air flowing past us, right to him in the back. And
okay.
So how about you guys? Have you had any recent COVID scares or
just that one?
Yeah, exactly for you.
So you guys texted us and to get us informed, and we were about to leave to go to San Diego. So this was the San Diego dog sitting situation. Yeah. So we weren't panicked because we hadn't, you let us know right away. So we had a little bit of time, but we considered driving out there and just bringing Georgie with us. And then if you guys could make it out here, you could stay and just the days would have been fine. You would have probably been better and or not contagious.
Right.
So we were ready to hop in the car, and we're like, it's only 16 hours. And we're actually used to long road trips. So 16 hours is that's 2 days. It's not that bad. Yeah. And then we'll have a car there and blah, blah, blah. And we'll have Georgie too.
Plus she would have loved it, right?
She would have loved the car trip.
She would have loved the car trip, and she actually would have enjoyed the beach pretty well too. She would have chased all the birds. But yeah, that was the biggest recent scare. But luckily, it worked out just fine. I was pretty nervous that you guys, you had enough exposure where it was oh man. So anyway, it all worked out fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we won't talk too long about this. We could do a whole episode about Georgie. But
of course, we would talk about Georgie.
The Georgie takeover.
She's a little quirky. How was it overall?
We really enjoyed it. We loved her. It was fun. She's particular, and you just have to know how to deal with her. But she's fine. Yeah, she's great. We had fun.
And for the people that can't see off camera, Georgie's over there showing her teeth at them. She's really encouraging them to say that. No, she's all right as long as you give her space.
Yep.
So I'm glad it turned out well because
She's wonderful.
she's a little nuts. But we'll tell her you said that.
Thank you.
She'll be very happy to hear it. So we do have multiple questions sort of listed out and assigned to people, which I did. And I'm not sure where we're at. It's funny how I just, let's talk about Georgie.
I think we're on question number 2. Why don't you all tell us what you did before you retired? Scott, how about you go first?
I was in market research. I worked as a project manager, and it was online market research. That was for the last 7 years or whatever, but I've been in market research for, I don't know, maybe 17 to 20 years. So, yeah.
And then I was, the last 15 years or so, I was in commercial real estate. I was an appraiser, valued commercial properties. Was interested in real estate, which is one of the reasons why I had gotten into that, but it ended up becoming more of a production type of a job. And so it's just produce, go all the time. So that just got draining after a good 15 years.
And then did you guys like your jobs?
No, not so much.
I did not like my job. I always just saw it as a means to an end. It was just a way to earn a living and support my other hobbies and things I did. Kind of, in retrospect, wish I'd had the, whatever it is, gumption, taking the opportunity to find stuff that I did like. I think you didn't
mind
unhappy.
it. It was just, I got bored. It's the same, it's very repetitive type of work. I mean, you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and I don't thrive in that kind of environment. And I didn't know that kind of going in. And I probably should have, maybe made a career transition or done something different. Maybe I would have been better as a commercial broker or something like that. I could have done something different, but I didn't. And so, yeah, at the 15-year mark, I was ready.
Yeah, looking back, both of us were in production jobs, and we think that was not, we didn't realize what that was like.
Yeah.
Have you guys been in production kinds of jobs or more sales or?
Yeah, mine was more on the, I guess, production operations side.
Yeah.
So project manager, software kind of stuff. And there were 4 or 5 releases per year. And then you were always like delivering, to your point.
Yep.
And it was the same cycle over and over again. So, you could get better at what you were doing and a little more efficient, but it was, it would get boring after a while.
Yep.
But what I ended up using the boredom to do other stuff. So it worked out okay. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do the minimum and then just move on because, the corporate ladder wasn't working out that well for me. So what about you, Carl?
No, just perhaps right now in my role as a podcaster, I don't know if it comes through at all, but Doug can be a tough boss. We got to record 8 times this week. You're late again. Get your ass over here.
Georgie, get him.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm curious so you were doing the jobs for a while and they weren't really engaging you. How'd you end up in those areas? So Jennifer, you said, you were kind of interested in real estate, so you kind of went that way.
Yeah, we both had worked, how we met, we both worked in the high tech industry, and I was in there probably about 15 years as well. And we had gotten kind of introduced to the Robert Kiyosaki information in the early 2000s. And so real estate was kind of a big piece of that. And I was like, okay, maybe real estate. We did some real estate residential investing. And I think at that point I was like, oh, maybe I'll transition and do something more real estate related. And so I basically kind of started taking some different classes, and appraisal was one that came up. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I'd like to learn how to value property. So it was more working to learn, and maybe I wanted to invest in commercial real estate later. And so I kind of ended up in that career. But it maybe just lasted a little bit.
Stayed a little
too long. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
And like she said, we both were working in the high tech industry, and that's where we met. I got laid off in 99, and a friend who was working in market research said, hey, they're looking for someone to help out. I'd been doing a lot of trade shows, and they wanted to do something similar. They called them car clinics. And so they hired me on to travel around, do these kind of trade show clinic things. So I was doing a little programming, data tabulation, and then stayed in that for about 9 years, then quit my job, moved to Japan for 2 years. And when I came back, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And an old boss said, got some openings. You want to shift into project management. So kind of just, momentum and circumstance.
Got it. So you didn't like your jobs that much. We'll back into how you were able to retire, but you've been retired for almost a year, getting close, not quite. So how's it been going?
It's been good. It's been good. I'm glad I'm not working in my traditional job, but it's been a transition, I think. And I think this last year has been trying to figure out like what's next, but also relaxing, regenerating, decompressing. Just more of it's just taking time away and taking time for ourselves. So, but yeah, I'm very glad. I'm not going into a job every day. Yeah.
I stopped working August of last year, and I stopped shaving at the same time.
Yeah.
So I got the beardometer here. About this is 10 months of growth, which I'm probably going to shave it off at the 1 year mark just for.
I'm going to have a little fun with it, I think, though.
Yeah.
We might go like mutton chops. We're trying to, I've got to figure out something to.
Or the evil curly mustache. We'll see. But yeah, I actually was talking to Jen about this the other day. I don't really consider myself retired. I kind of I don't know the word. I have trouble with the word because for me, it has a connotation of like not wanting to ever do anything again. And I guess I see myself more on like a hiatus or just, I don't know, reorienting what direction I'm going in. And I guess about retirement, I wouldn't want people to not think of me if they have some interesting project. I definitely am retired from market research and from corporate America. I don't want to go back in that direction, but I'm really looking forward to maybe having some projects come up or finding some direction.
So that's a pretty interesting comment. Would you, I'm kind of curious, under what circumstances would you go back to work? Like, would you go back to work for a typical 40-hour-a-week job where you have to be somewhere, or strictly telecommuting, contract basis? What kind of relationship would you accept?
Well, is there an offer here? No, I think if there was a mission or a project that I, was interested in, or even a group of people I really wanted to work with. So at this point, I have no clue what that would be. But Carl, like if you wanted help with that house and we were around, I'd be happy to come and learn about that and get my hands dirty. Kind of open to any projects. So I wouldn't want people to be like, oh, Scott's done. He doesn't want to do anything. And,
I don't know about the typical corporate environment.
Yeah,
maybe we've done that for literally almost 30 years. So it's like, okay, we understand that. And I don't know if I'd go back to that. It's not like we want to sit around and do nothing all day. We want to do stuff, but what is it? And that's the piece that's actually been the harder part, is trying to figure out what's that next thing once you don't have to work for money.
And just to be clear for Scott, Rat Farm is not on the table.
I think for me, I did not have a great experience in typical corporate America. And I think the biggest piece for me was the lack of autonomy, being just this kind of authoritarian, you have to be here at this point, have to do this by this date and whatever. I'm very much team player, team oriented. And if there's a project, I'll work hard to get that done and meet the goals and help the team. But the just constant, you have to follow these rigid rules is not a good fit for me. Cool. Did you guys experience did you have much autonomy in your corporate careers, or were you on the treadmill?
At the end I did. I went part-time and we were fully remote. But still there were rigid parts of it. You have to be online from this time to this time, and vacation policies and that type of thing. Not as much autonomy as I would like. I often consider the same question as you, Scott, if I would go back. And I actually would, but it would have to be a very special set of very loose circumstances. Like, here's your thing. You can do it whenever you want to. Just have it done in the next 2 years and whatever. But just to back up a second, the Rat Farm comment in our sound check, Scott expressed his queasiness for rats. So listen to the end and you'll hear what we're talking about there.
And for me, a lot of the time period, I didn't have very much autonomy, but like Carl, towards the end, I had a lot more. So I had a team of my own. And at some point I was like, I'm just going to manage them how I want, not how everyone else is. And I think eventually that's why I got laid off. But I did something really cool. In the consulting industry, oftentimes you can't get promoted unless you're doing the job above you. So what I did was delegate virtually everything that I had to do to my team, which left me with basically nothing to do. But it helped them out because they wanted to take on more responsibility. But it made me like unnecessary.
They were now ready to get promoted, but
yeah. I mean, there weren't enough spaces, but I mean, still, I just did whatever I wanted, and then they had plenty of stuff to do. It helped them out. They were like engaged, doing more challenging things instead of the same thing for several years. But that's probably how I got laid off. But it was awesome though, because I was like, I'm delegating everything. Like, let's see what happens, because my boss wouldn't have approved that.
Doug, I feel like we have the opposite relationship in that I don't really do shit with this, and you do almost all the work. I just show up for half hour a week. I'm usually late. I forget to wear my MHFi shirt, which I did again today. I haven't showered in a week. I'm sorry, you have to sit next to me today. So
it's the I'm giving you the loose autonomy that you need. You just show up when you want. And the thing is, I have a team of people doing stuff. You know, your friend Alan. He's working with us too.
Yeah.
You didn't even know.
Yeah.
Well, this may actually be the ultimate delegation. You think you're giving him this autonomy, but he's really just...
I've delegated a lot to you, actually. You don't even know that you're doing this work.
It's a trap.
Okay. So, yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Are you two decompressed yet?
No, for sure. I'm a year and a half in from quitting, and still, I mean, I'm still sleeping. Well, maybe not 12 hours like Scott sleeps, but no, it's, I think it takes time. I worked almost 30 years in a corporate job, and I don't know how I even expected that in a year or year and a half that I would be decompressed. So yeah, I think it takes, everybody's going to be different, but I think it takes longer than maybe we think it should.
And I'm not even sure what decompressed really means. I mean, we're trying rest and recuperation, but I have no idea where what level I'm supposed to come back to. We were just so amped up and adrenal fatigued, and
at what point
just
are
go.
we feel like...
We're not sure what's normal. We're kind of trying to figure out, recalibrate everything, like what's normal. And actually, Jen thought she was decompressed after about a month and a half and was ready to go start new businesses and get going on things. And
yeah, when we went down to Oaxaca, Mexico, when we did the trip with Alan and Katie Donegan, we're down there last year of the Rebel Business School. It was a year and a half or a month and a half after I had quit my job, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm rested, I slept, all this kind of stuff. And I get down there and I'm like, all right, I'm ready for this, entrepreneurial, this whole next, chapter of my life. And I get down there, and one of the people that was down at the event asked me a question that kind of changed everything, and it changed that trip, but it's kind of changed the last year. But he's basically asked me, he's like, if you were not allowed to make any money for the next year, what would you do? I was like, I don't know, actually. Like, I hadn't asked myself that question because I was just ready. I'm a doer. I like to, always be busy. And it was like, I was just ready to jump into the next thing, right? It's like, okay, let's start a new business. And I was like, wow, that's actually, I think, a better question to ask for me. Let's take some time for that. And I still don't know what the answer is, but I know that that's probably a better route for me instead of just jumping into my next project. And maybe in a couple of years from now, I'd just be in the same spot I'm in today that I'd burned out, so yeah.
That is a good question. And Scott, you said you went to Japan for 2 years. So what'd you do there? And do you think that was like a baseline of like decompression?
Well, I drank a lot of beer in Japan. No, I was there for kind of some personal reasons and to pursue an interest in a martial art. And really also just, I never lived internationally abroad and wanted to kind of have that experience. And the economy was crashing in like 2009, and I was just like, felt like now or never. And so went off and did that and explored that, and it was a lot of fun. But it wasn't really,
you didn't
it wasn't restful at
No.
all. It was stressful in its own kind of way. And then towards the end, coming back, I needed money and was trying to figure out how to make ends meet, and that had its own stress.
Okay.
So how about you guys? You guys have been out of corporate America for a while and are around a lot of people who are FI. Have you gotten kind of a sense of what looks decompressed or rested and recuperated from yourselves or people you're around?
I think, for me, I mean, I still work. I just run my own business. I think I decompressed pretty well from the corporate world after, I think there was like a month and a half, and then maybe 3 months later, like I stopped thinking about it. Part of it, I was working on my own stuff.
Sure.
Like you said, Scott, that had its own stresses and issues. So it took a little while to like get the business going. And then I think I've reached some sort of like nice equilibrium where there's enough stimulation and structure and things to do. And then there's enough like downtime. So I feel pretty good. I think I could probably turn it down. And like what you said, Jennifer, the person who mentioned, what would you do if you couldn't make money? That would be really good because I could think of plenty of things that I would do, but I'm like filling it with some, other stuff. Some of it's worthwhile, like this podcast. Other things I'm like, I should just stop doing that. That's dumb. So, all right, Carl, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a great question. I liked what you said, Jennifer. What would you do if you couldn't make money for a year? And I think one question we ask on the podcast is what your perfect day is. And my perfect day would be probably going for a 2-hour walk first thing in the morning, listening to podcasts and music. After that, I'd work out. I'd go to the gym or my basement, work out for another 2 hours. And after that, I'd be pursuing creative things like building, working on the house, artwork, and playing piano, learning Spanish. So those things are all very important to me. And I look at how I live my life now, and I don't do much of any of those things. And it's because we bought this house 2.5 years ago that pretty much consumed my life. It was, I don't know if mistake is too strong of a word. I think it is too strong of a word because we have great community. We love where we live, but I should have managed this project a little bit differently and perhaps hired people. So I don't think I'll be truly decompressed until I'm at a good stopping point with that. So no, I'm not decompressed, but I could see it took me a long time. The thing for me is it took me a long time to figure out what decompression actually looks like, to give myself permission to do a 2-hour walk every day and to go to the gym for 2 or 3 hours. I don't think I would have allowed myself to do that a year or two after I quit, but now I can. It took a long time, but I'm getting there. It's a work in progress.
I think there's something in like that being in productive mode. I think in a corporate job, we're always pushing to be productive and, doing things on our to-do list or whatever it is. But I mean, I think being productive is, going, taking a 2-hour walk, going and working out at a gym. Like that's productive for ourselves, right? And we kind of get that mixed up in our head a little bit of.
But that's a big shift for you, right? Like before it was getting everything done on your
my
list,
checklist
getting
or whatever.
everything.
Yeah, that's productive.
You need more things on the list so
Like
that you
actually
can be
taking
more
care-
productive.
Taking care of me is actually a very productive, thing right now. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, it sounds like you were both pretty driven and maybe busybodies to some extent.
Me for sure.
Are you doing anything to be like non-productive, or there's a whole like anti-productivity movement? There's a bunch of books on it too. So are you guys doing anything specific to make sure that you're not productive?
I think not so much. I guess it depends who you ask. I think our definition or our version of what productive means has changed.
Right.
And so in that sense, no, we don't feel we're being unproductive. Like for me, sleeping 10, 12 hours feels very productive with the goal of like rest and recuperation, looking at long-term health and fitness.
But I'm purposely, I guess, trying not to be in the traditional sense of productive, like trying not to jump into something new because I know me, and if I do it, I'm going to do it 100%. Right? So I need.
She's like Georgie; she's just all in and full.
So yeah, I guess I feel like I've been pulling back more, over the last year, so I don't just jump into something. But yeah, so
I think there's a compulsion to be busy,
Yeah.
and that's encouraged by our culture and definitely by corporate America. That I don't know. Are you guys finding that you need to not fill your time, but that you have a hard time having some downtime and relaxing?
I definitely get the urge because there's always like more stuff to do.
Always.
No matter what you're working on, there's always more stuff to do. But I've been taking edibles and doing weed lately. No, I'm just kidding. So it does help, but that is not why I'm not as productive. I have really been encouraging Carl to try it out, but he's been strong so far. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Kids don't do drugs. I have been like suppressing the urge to like keep doing more stuff.
Right.
And I mean, I have like a shelf of productivity books behind me, so it's like anti that. And I have been checking out some of the like anti-productivity books, which surprisingly, there's a handful out there that sort of counter the hustle culture kind of stuff. So I think I've been doing okay and just kind of turning it down. But there is the urge, even on like vacation in San Diego, we're trying to have a down day. And I'm like, maybe I should sweep the floor in here again because there's sand. I'm like, you don't need to sweep the fucking floor again.
It's fine.
There's more sand out there. It's going to get in here again. So
If you like sweeping and cleaning, Doug, I have plenty of work.
it's the perfect way to like procrastinate. Like if there's a thing you have to do, it's like, oh, I'm going to clean because like we needed to do it anyway. So that's another trick.
Yeah. I think for me, putting very specific rules and constraints around your life helps out. Like we just bought this other house that we're going to fix up. But I said to Mindy, I'm like, we're going to buy this thing, but we're not going to do any construction on it. We're not going to touch it until the girls go back to school. You're going to find a way to help me with it. And that turned into doing a video series with Bigger Pockets. We're going to film the whole thing and we're going to hire people to help us. And and that's it. We will not work on it outside of school hours and we'll get this done quickly with the help of others. And we've had like 7 people reach out to us as a result of this podcast. That's and great. Minnie's there going to come and help, which is pretty cool too. MileHiFiClub@gmail.com if you're interested in this gig. But yeah, I think it's hard. You have to give yourself permission and then you have to set up the rules and then you have to follow them, which is not always easy. Maybe drugs are the answer, Doug.
Yeah. I mean, seems to work, just the caffeine and then the weed later. So yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
So
still kidding.
Jen said something pretty interesting a couple minutes ago. She referred to Scott's sleeping habits, and I think she said something about 12 hours. Is that sarcasm or is that...
No, that's like legit.
So actually, we went up to the Rocky Mountain National Park yesterday and drove up through the Alpine Meadows. And
gorgeous.
Very gorgeous.
Absolutely gorgeous,
Had a great time. And I found my new hero. We were reading this little plaque, and it showed a picture of that furry little marmot. And it was asking, can you sleep 65% of your life away? And I guess that's what they do, although they hibernate in 7 to 8 months. So
yeah.
I'm really trying to, I always burned the candle at both ends before and really just not hardly slept, but was always willing to sacrifice sleep so that I could fulfill my obligations at work and then pursue my other hobbies and interests. It was like, I'll just sleep later, which turns out is now. So I don't know, looking at it, long term, I'd like to be healthy, like all of us. I'd like to be fit. I'd like to be relaxed. And I think taking some time off, this kind of break or hiatus, and really being productive by investing in that. So it's less of laziness and more of an investment that I'm looking at.
And it gives me free time in the morning too, so I get my own space.
Scott, you are forever known to me as Scott the Marmot. That doesn't quite rhyme, but I'm going to go with it. Jen, how about your sleep?
At the beginning, when I first quit, I was sleeping a lot, and taking naps. So it was a combo of that, and then I kind of settled into. I've always been kind of a good sleeper. 8 hours of sleep has been pretty good for me. And then lately, it seems like it moves around a little bit. So lately, I can sleep in pretty well. Pet sitting for Georgie. She wanted to get up at 6:30, so I was up. And I'm fine with that. And then I can kind of cycle back. Right now, we're pet sitting, and I can sleep in. Especially if it's dark. So sleep it's important, and I kind of actually prioritizing it has been an important thing for the last year. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would sleep more if I could, actually.
Yeah. And Scott, when you, on average, how much were you sleeping before? So, because I'm thinking I probably can't sleep more than like 9 hours. And that's super rare. Like it's rare when I get to like 8.5 hours or so. I have to have stayed up the whole weekend or something, and then I could sleep longer. But 10, 12 hours, I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I can't do it. If I just laid in bed, I don't think I could sleep that long. So,
I don't know. Like, it really depended on the day. I had a minimum of an hour and a half. So I basically had about a 3 to 4, probably an average of 3.5 hour commute each day on top of, my 8 to 10, whatever hour work day. And then I'd go and either go do martial arts, which often involved another hour of drive a day, or I was working on building up our business. So I'd get home at 1:30 a.m. and have to be at work by 8 a.m. with an hour and a half, 2 hour drive there. So on the weekends, I guess I would kind of crash and catch up on sleep. But during the week, I was just whatever I had to do to get things done.
You weren't getting 8 hours a night
to me.
like during the week.
Yeah, not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, 6-7 hours. And I definitely needed more. I'm not one of those people who's like, I function great on 6 hours sleep. Like I always was just exhausted
Yeah. Man.
But there was things I wanted to accomplish and wanted to get done and had to get done. So
Yeah. Oh, Carl, how much do you sleep now?
7 hours at best.
Okay. And I'm averaging maybe like 7.5-ish, but I'm trying to sleep more, and I do like naps, but if I sleep well at night, then I'm usually not tired.
Yeah.
One thing I have, like, we've like weaned off of caffeinated coffee, so we've kind of, even since you guys just left a couple days ago, like I'm like, oh, we're just gonna do decaf now. So I don't think it'll make a huge difference because we were already like tapering it down quite a bit. But you guys are coffee drinkers. Does that impact your sleep much? Or
No.
Okay.
Not at all, actually. I mean, we can have a cup of coffee at night and go to bed.
Bad.
Yeah.
yeah, I could have a few espressos and go right to sleep. I've never had any problem going to sleep, probably because I'm always exhausted. But it's actually something I'm interested in looking at this year or maybe a little longer. If, I'm still finding I'm exhausted, maybe something to look into with some of the sleep experts or some other health related aspects to just kind of see. Probably need to start exercising some more.
Yeah, it might help. Yeah.
Just looking at different options to get energy up and
the book by, I think it's an audio book on Audible, but it's called Caffeine by Michael Pollan, the food author. Check that out. It may encourage you, because I know caffeine didn't impact my sleep, but I think it actually did. But I was just able to sleep well enough.
Right.
So I think he said he went off it for like 3 months or something, and it takes longer than you think to get it out of your system and to break the addiction loop. Really, like, it's an interesting book, so check it out. I'm not encouraging you to quit coffee or caffeine, but just to
just swap out those edibles, right?
Yeah.
No, we're both willing to run mini experiments and very interested in that at this point. I think that's this year we're really trying to shake things up and test out new things that we haven't done before, and try different approaches to travel and different approaches to
even food. I mean, we went vegan for a couple months earlier this year, based on like poor numbers of health numbers and cholesterol numbers that we had last year. So we're willing to kind of try stuff and see, right? And
how'd that go, by the way?
It was really interesting.
It was good, actually.
It dramatically impacted blood work, and most things, probably good 80% were positive increases, and then there were some minor things that it didn't help with. So we're looking at some other experiments to run, other tweaks to make.
I think we probably like meat more than to go vegan long term. And we were doing the forks over knives kind of strategy, which was like no oil.
Hardcore vegan,
that is really hard. So, I mean, everything, it's amazing when you start looking at products. I mean, everything's got oil in it. So it was more of a transition, but we realized that, we just need to eat more vegetables in our diet, regardless of what we do.
Or more of a variety and quantity.
Yeah.
So back up a second. You can't even have olive oil? Or just
no
really?
Processed, at least on the forks over knives, traditional kind of. Which
turns out is really hard, because even like a lot of packages of raisins, for example, they've got oil in them to make them shiny. And if you're really trying to stay away from oil, it's surprisingly hard. You're pretty much cooking everything yourself
from scratch.
Yeah.
From scratch, yeah. We did drink alcohol. That was the one thing that we didn't completely kick out of the program, but it did. It was enough of a difference, I think, from looking at our numbers, that from going on statins versus not going on statins, it was kind of that, like, it made that much of a difference. We're like, wow, you can actually really impact, just those kind of numbers.
At least in the short term, and Correct. We're looking to see if some other changes may impact longer term.
Right.
How about you guys? Have you done any kind of dietary experiments or other lifestyle experiments that?
Yeah, not so much. We've pivoted to we're not completely vegetarians, but we eat mostly vegetables. The olive oil thing kind of surprises me. I see where they're going with that book, but from listening to doctors like the Peter Attia dude, I think that's supposedly one of the healthiest things you can eat. So we try to incorporate more of that in our diet. But yeah, sometimes for dinner, we'll just have a big salad with maybe a little bit of grilled chicken on it or something like that. Yeah, the animal welfare issues and also the environmental impact. Like, all that corn we grow in Nebraska and Iowa, that's not for us. That's to feed the animals that then we eat. If we cut out the animal stuff, it would be a lot more sustainable.
And I haven't done any big things, but I'm trying to remember, my cholesterol had crept up to maybe like 225, and it was like slowly going up. And now I'm like trying to remember like what I did exactly, but I think I cut my carbs a lot. I was eating a lot. It was a high fat diet basically, and protein. And I think it was just a year, it dropped to like 170.
Wow.
And then it did actually go back up. So I'm not sure which variable I fucked up on there, but like it dropped a lot, and I was eating and doing everything normal. I'm not 100% sure like what I need to go back and figure out which year that was, but I think it may have just been cutting out more like sugar and carbs and stuff like that.
And then have both of you been kind of increasing exercise levels, you think? I know you've talked about some different challenges or things.
I don't run as much as I used to. I used to do a whole lot of cardio. But yeah, not as much now. I just don't run as much. So yeah, what about you?
Yeah, more weight exercise, more really fast walking. I think that's the sweet spot for trying to
speed walking.
Speed walking. Get rid of body fat. You get your heart rate up, but not too high where you're consuming muscle for energy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think we should take a left turn here and talk about money a little bit. So the market's down right now and inflation's high. And I guess when you guys actually like retired, things were great. Things were like on a growth trajectory. So how do you feel about it now? Are you nervous because of where the market is? And I'll just leave it at that. And just, for people that don't know, the sequence of returns is so important. So if you're drawing money down while the market's down, then, your shares are sort of diluting. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but it is important, and we're kind of in a bad time.
Right.
So how do you guys feel about it?
I'm not worried at all, actually. Are you?
No,
he's more the worrier.
So in the past, I've been more of a worrier. We got interested. Yeah, we had been exposed to Robert Kiyosaki information for a lot of years, and some of that had worked for us, some hadn't, and we got exposed to the kind of FI community in basically about 2018.
Yeah.
And so we had, wanted to go and build up an equities portfolio that would support us. We're about 2/3, 3/4 of the way there on that. But we had built this side business, and that's pretty passive in the sense of, I don't know, we'll probably spend 4 or 5 hours at most on it a week. And that's what's supporting our lifestyle. And kind of we're thinking of letting it support us for the next 10 years or so and be kind of a bridge to traditional FI where maybe you're withdrawing from your equities portfolio. So for us, I guess we're kind of still in the accumulation phase on the equity side rather than drawdown. So
yeah,
when the market's down, it's actually a great buying opportunity from our perspective. And we're trying to dump in a bunch of money and take advantage of any reduced rates.
Right. And because, we really, most of our equities is long-term, 401k kind of money. So we don't really need to access that until 59 and a half. So we're in our early 50s. So we've got that. The side business is basically an equipment leasing business. And we build food trailers and then we rent them out to people. So we can we're living off of that income right now.
Are you both kind of in similar situations, right? Where you have your own business and Carl, I think you guys have other sources of income. Are you worried about the market volatility or conditions now? Or?
Yeah, Doug and I are both kind of Wi-Fi, especially me because my wife works and I don't. I'm not worried at all. But again, we have the luxury of income. If we didn't have the income, it's hard to say. I like to tell myself I would not be worried, 4% roll, blah, blah, blah. But I'd probably be freaking out just a little bit. But yeah, we've got the incredible luxury of still being able to put money in, and we do other things like we do microloans and we get like 12% interest for that, which is like 4% roll. Screw you. I could be like 8 or 10% roll. So yeah, it doesn't worry me at all, but I fear for people who might have retired at the end of last year and then, hey, look, there's a war and then inflation and da da da. I hope those people are doing okay. But I mean, if you believe in the 4% rule, it should account for all of this.
Yeah. I'm not worried specifically. Again, like Carl said, my wife works, I'm earning money. And I think probably what you guys found, like if you started a business, once you've done that, sure, it's hard, but you're like, I can figure out how to make money. So I'm not too worried. I can figure out how to make money. However, and we won't go deep into this because it's a big rabbit hole, but because inflation's up and the supply side issues that we have, this does look a little bit different than some of the recessions since I've been an adult. So the last 25 years or so. And it does look different, and it looks more like the 70s than it does like the 80s or 90s. But what do I know? I'm not an economist, and half of those people will be wrong anyway, and the other half will probably not be right. So it does look different, but I'm not worried. It just seems like there's a few different variables than what we've seen recently. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of a large macro level. There's definitely a lot of things right that are concerning. You mentioned inflation, and I guess probably for us,
we haven't seen a whole lot of change. Yeah, I mean, for costs, I guess our costs haven't inflated a lot, other than choosing certain things like we've.
Yeah, I think for us, the impact of inflation has almost been more lifestyle inflation in a weird way, because we've chosen this year to try a bunch of experiments and do a bunch of travel. At the same time, I think it's been really moderate. And I think a lot of that is we had hacked out a lot of our expenses kind of before quitting our jobs and chosen a path of being a little more frugal.
Right.
And, now we're increasing a little bit of that with travel and whatnot, but
we're kind of purposely choosing to kind of increase our lifestyle, I guess, a little bit as we're experimenting different kind of travel options and what kind of.
Although, gas is higher in California, so we're traveling more, driving more, but we're doing it in other states, in Colorado. So spending more, using more gas, but it's $1 less out here, at least.
At least, yeah.
And then a lot of the travel we're doing pet sitting and doing other things. So we're not necessarily seeing a lot of the inflated prices.
Food costs have been pretty similar. It's actually cheaper on some stuff here in Colorado than it is in California. So,
but I do think overall, it'll be going up, and it'll be interesting to see how the future unfolds. So,
yeah, cool. I'd like to know a little bit more about that side hustle, that trailer business. Do you care to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to?
Oh, you go for it. Yeah.
I had a friend who was a builder, and he'd gotten into building food trucks. And I was kind of helping him out with some aspects of it at the time, having a project management background, and looking into it, he was interested in having some outside investments or money partners, and we decided to give it a go. And so in 2016, we got our first trailer, and then we are now up to 9 trailers. We basically kind of have a profit sharing model on it. And after taking into account all repairs, vacancies, insurance, really all expenses, each trailer nets about $700 for us. So
a month, yeah.
Yeah, $700 a month. So that pretty much covers our expenses right now, and
they basically
more than covers it.
They're the kind of the property managers part of it. We're the kind of the money partners of they're the builders and the property managers, and it's it's been a very COVID friendly business. Mm-hmm. It's outdoors. People are looking. Most of them are in California related, so the weather is good year round. So people can actually run their business year round. And we've had some issues, right? I mean, you got to make sure that they don't just take off to Mexico, right? Because it could happen. Yeah. So we've had struggles as well, just like any kind of a rental property, but just a kind of a different type of a rental.
And what's the cost of one of the trailers?
It really depends on build costs, but you're looking, I guess you mentioned inflation. That's one of the big things. Material costs for that kind of thing have gone up tremendously, and material buying generators has gone up. So you're looking, I guess, we'll call it anywhere between 50, 60,000 probably to build a basic trailer. Mm-hmm. And, but right now we've pretty much built out the ones we're going to build. I really wanted to get to 10 just because it's a round number.
Yeah.
And we've kind of stopped at 9 at this
We're
point.
like, it's good. Like it's enough.
I might want to go for
I
that.
know.
We'll see. Well, that's great. I was going to say this awesome cash flow when you consider, if someone's buying like a $200,000 house or whatever to rent out, and you have way less in it. And I don't know if that was a bad example of $200,000, but it seems like a good amount of cash flow for the amount that you have in.
Correct. Yeah.
Do you think that's good?
Do you get free street tacos? I care about taco flow now.
All we can eat. No, we actually don't have. We're kind of trying to operate it as much as possible, a little bit of a distance, and so we don't deal with the clients directly unless there's some challenges or some problems that they may be having, and then we'll come in and try to help find a solution that works for them. There's a bit of turnover with the trailers, and
more than you'd think. Yeah. I think everybody thinks that they've got the best mother's secret recipe and they can start, a business.
It's a hard business for people. I really admire the people who are able to. Some people, we've had some clients though the one since 2016 has been continuous since then.
We have a client that's basically a brewery. A lot of breweries, you're not allowed to, have a food license, for example. So they have basically.
Or they don't have a full kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
So they've got a trailer parked out in front of the brewery. I mean, we've all kind of been to those places, and those are great because they are, they have an inflow of people coming into the breweries, and then they can serve food. So those tend to do well, but it's the people that don't have any food experience that it's a little more of a challenge. So.
Nice. Well, continuing to move forward here, when did you guys discover Fi? It sounded like you had a little rich dad, poor dad influence and then moved over to Fi. So where did you first discover it? And then were you both on board at the same time? How was the sort of life cycle of that?
I think the Robert Kiyosaki stuff was the early 2000s. And we kind of went a little bit, not hardcore, but we definitely jumped in and paid for every single seminar that you can think of and all of that. And it wasn't a fit for us at the time. Real estate is probably the piece that we kind of looked at. The entrepreneurial piece of it just wasn't a fit. Starting our own business, it just seemed too complicated or too big. So we did invest in some real estate, but none of it went great. It was
none of it went bad.
None of it went bad. Yeah. We just didn't make, tons of money, and we weren't able to, retire on.
Well, we actually did make a bunch of money on one house, but it covered all the debt we'd taken out paying for seminars, so it was kind of like a wash.
Yeah.
We've actually never been hurt, knock on wood, in real estate. We've had a couple of just break-even situations, a couple of really good
just
situations.
Sold our last, residential property just this year. But basically, it was kind of a gap between the early 2000 to 2018 is really when we discovered Fi, and we just kind of decided okay, we just might as well go back to work. It was like, I guess that's the path that we were going to take until we kind of really discovered. Scott really did. I mean, he's the researcher, so, and that's kind of it. And as soon as we figured that out, I mean, it's been just a handful of years now to supercharge.
We've actually identified that we always seem to be counter-cyclical. Like we were looking for cash flowing properties and pretty much only looking for cash flowing properties in California when they were only appreciating, nothing would cash flow. And same thing with the stock market. We were looking for, stock appreciation. Well, when the stocks were going up, we were looking for sideways things and vice versa. We're just always not paying much attention, I guess, to what's going on around us. And so we're trying to get better at that and take advantage of opportunities that are actually there versus just following a strategy that. So really, since
2018 has been our kind of transition of looking at seeing the Fi community. This community has kind of really spoken to us more. It's like, really? You start cutting expenses? I mean, it was simple, but it was it was a key. It was one piece that we just missed with our previous, financial freedom kind of messaging that we had previously. And it made all the difference.
That was the key that finally started started the machine and got everything going. How about you guys? Had you had experience with other, movements or other perspectives on wealth and financial freedom?
Pretty much just this one. I think you were in that UFO cult, Doug. Oh, I guess I wasn't supposed to talk about that, but you're out now. It's all good. But I think we all know each other because of the Choose a Fi Los Angeles group. You had met up with the Waffles on Wednesday, and I don't think I've been at some of those events, but I never met you at in one of those, but I think that's how you connected with Alan and Katie too, right?
Correct.
They were okay.
Yeah, there was a meetup.
And then you went to Oaxaca, and I barely missed you there. You finally came out to Colorado, and I missed you there. But it's pretty neat, the community and how these people become friends. I think of us as popcorn. We're always all over the place, but then once in a while we're all in the same place together. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I came at this from the entrepreneur side, so it was like all side hustle kind of stuff. And a lot of the values are really similar with the Fi community and then entrepreneurs or side hustle type folks. But it's funny because they talk past each other often. And there's a few people that are in both camps and you're like, oh yeah, like we see the similarity, but some people are so deep in whatever they're doing, they don't pay attention to the other, or they're really dogmatic about whatever they think and they're not open to it. But it's been interesting. It's cool for me because I am in both camps and I can see the parallels and I'm just like, it's so clear. I don't know why you guys are like fighting about the nuance of something pointless, like you're trying to do the same thing. So, and I'm just curious, what was the initial Fi stuff that you ran into?
I think when I go into something, I tend to jump in both feet. It was kind of all the big podcasts. I mean, Paula Pants Afford Anything, Choose FI, like Doc G's Earn and Invest.
Mr. Money Mustache.
Mr. Money Mustache, read all of his article. I mean, just was really, and each of them kind of mention other people who they know of and are associated with. So, in some ways, I was lucky that I had this 3.5 hour commute every day, and I like listening to things at 2x. So I'm listening to 6 to 8 hours of material a day during that, and so I really consumed a lot of podcasts. Okay. I like reading and wanted to read more blogs, but I was just 10 hours of email. I was just done at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But he kind of came home. I mean, at some point, he came home and he's like, oh, excited about it. And he's like, listen to this. And so we'd listened, and I've always been pretty open. I mean, I think you asked like, have I been on board from the beginning? And yes, pretty much as soon as we kind of
when we'd had all those years of looking into other approaches.
Right. It was like,
things.
Okay. And then I kind of went, again, I was commuting at that point in time as well. So listened to a lot of podcasts. So it was, actually commuting was probably one of the best things because it really got us, listening to more content pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So,
and I love learning and absorbing material, but she's really a doer. So she's just like, okay, we're going to take expenses, just cut all these to the bone and do all these other things. So
yeah, I came up with a list of about 42 things that we
like
in
that
2019.
first year, right?
Yeah, that we basically not necessarily cut, but it was that changes that we made, in our life. And I'm happy I can send you a link, for the show notes, but it was a good list of just stuff that we just hadn't thought of. And they were all like little things that you think like, oh, to save an extra $20 or $50 it's not a life changer. It's not going to make you FI, but you do that over and over and over in a lot of different areas. And you realize like, wow, this stuff,
it's dramatic.
It adds up. So I think that was a big kind of eye opener for us. It's like, oh, and our lifestyle didn't necessarily change a lot because of it. When you change cell phone plans or something, it's like, I still have a cell phone. It still works. And I'm just paying a quarter of the price. That makes a big difference. Yeah.
Cool. You've mentioned Robert Kiyosaki a couple times. What does he get right and wrong?
Ooh, I'll let you take that one, Gitz. Yeah, you.
We because of our age, I mean, we grew up in seeing a lot of seminars and was learning Annex and Carl, you mentioned community earlier. And I think one of the things we really appreciate about the Fi community is just the sincerity and vulnerability, and that it's not a constant just pitch-a-thon for the next seminar, next product. And looking back, I mean, that's Robert Kiyosaki and other gurus and groups like that. They're in that model of constantly kind of selling and trying to upselling you to the next thing, even if their material, whether material is good or not good. And so I'd say I would separate into, the material and concepts that he has versus his approach and, the way it's presented. And that we've really lost our taste for. We don't really want to be sold stuff. We don't want to be just constantly being dragged into another seminar. The material and concepts
was transformational. Yeah.
Yeah. I think are great. And I'd say they're all pretty much, they cover the gamut of what Fi covers. The big difference, I'd see is where the emphasis is put. If you almost said like an 80-20 rule, they're putting 80% of their emphasis on creating more income, getting rich, versus like the FI community kind of seems to flip-flop that, where the vast majority of emphasis is put on, focusing on expenses first. Not that you shouldn't go do those other things, but you can get big wins early, dramatically change your life, and build up a lot of capital and cash to then put towards those businesses you want to do. We were always trying to buy houses with no money down or hardly any money down, how to start a business without making any changes to our lifestyle. And that's what really turbocharged things for us, was suddenly having this pool of money accumulate after making all these cuts that we could then invest in a side business or an asset. So what do you think?
I think his message was good. I mean, it was one of those books that, that changed, it changed us, and I think for the good. There
just wasn't for us enough emphasis on cut your expenses, cut your lifestyles.
The message
to
is there.
Facilitate.
It's just we didn't hear it, and how it's So,
yeah. How about you guys? Have you run across any information there that you felt was a good fit or not a good fit? Or
I never read the book. I've heard of it a lot. People talk about it all the time. I think I got the gist of it, but
you got the clip notes.
Yeah. Did you read it?
Yeah, I did read it. And his thing is, it turns out he made the story. Yeah. He made up the story. It's all fiction. And I think he compares, like, one dad was a college professor and he was only making like $120,000 a year. And the other dad is an entrepreneur doing all this other shit, making all this other money. Like, that part I think is valuable, but it doesn't sit well with me. If you really, not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Like, some people love being a professor. If that's your thing, and if you're making $120,000, you could still make a pretty good life for yourself. But this is all aside from his material. But I think his seminars are like, if you pay for the big one, I thought it was like $50,000 or something like that, right?
We never got anything like that. But I think all of them have, upsell products that.
Yeah. So that annoys me, and I think this does tie into the book. Is he like, how much money does that guy need? He must be worth like $50 million. I have no idea. I've never Googled it. We will after we're done with this, but it seems, does the entrepreneurship and this need to always be selling or creating or owning real estate, does that come from a point of greed, and is that a direct reflection on him? Like, does he genuinely enjoy, like, how would Robert Kiyosaki answer the question, if you couldn't make money for a year, would you still be doing these seminars? And I think the answer to that is no. I think he's maybe a flawed person, that he's just become obsessed with making the money and obsessed with wealth. And I think that's pretty toxic too. And you got to be careful not to fall into that trap. And you see that a lot with these people. You see men bigger pockets, like, my goal is to own 1,000 doors. Like, well, is it a money or ego thing? Like, why do you really want to do it at this point? How is it making your life better after you reach a certain point? Like, what do you want to do with it? Like, I don't know. If I had infinite money, I might have some kind of flying device, but that might be the only difference. Like, helicopters are supposed to be awesome, but I don't know. I could probably do that now, actually. Can I land it in your backyard?
Yeah.
My yard is not big enough.
I don't think Georgie would approve of a helicopter. Although she might like to ride in it.
Oh. She could, yeah. She would enjoy that a lot. She likes riding in cars, for people that don't. Okay. So moving forward here, what's changed about how you view FI or retirement now that you've stopped working?
It's changed. I don't know. Do you have a?
Is it what you thought?
That's probably maybe for me. It is and it isn't. I think when I quit my job because I wasn't happy just doing the day-to-day stuff, that it'd be like, oh, okay, great. Now I'm. It's that whole unicorns and rainbows kind of thing. It's like, and it's not that. I think that's the part that I've struggled with more, of trying to, like, what's that transition look like? And that's been more of a challenge. And maybe that's the part that I didn't expect as much, that the transition wouldn't be, it's just not like, oh, you wake up and like life is perfect again. Like that doesn't happen. You got to work on that. So that's probably for me been more of the transition change. Now that I'm at a year and a half, and I'm still like, I don't know what do I do with the rest of my life, kind of thing. So
I guess before we had quit our jobs, I've always had a lot of interests and a lot of hobbies all my life. And if someone had asked me like, oh, if we, give you whatever, enough money so you don't have to work, what would you do? And I would have had this long list of things. And now I mostly sleep. So I'm looking forward to hopefully, getting back to a point where I'm rested and recuperated and have some of that kind of energy and interest back. I've been surprised that I haven't wanted to go jump into some of the things that I really spent a lot of time on before, or kind of double down on those. Yeah. So I think we're still I feel like we're still in a transition phase, trying to kind of figure this all out and see where things will go. Okay. Enjoying it. It's definitely, I'm definitely enjoying not having to go to work. So from that side, I was talking to Jen, it's kind of like a lot of it depends on where my focus is at a certain time. If I'm focusing on, like, if you ask a question about what's it like compared to where you're working before, it's like everything is unicorns and rainbows.
It's great, yeah.
But if we're saying like, oh, how's your life today versus maybe how you'd like it to be, and I'm saying, well, I aspire to have, projects in my life that are meaningful, of finding some purpose that I really want to contribute to, then there's this gap. So is it the gap to something that's better or more that I aspire to, or the gap from where I was and dread ever having to go back to? So which one of those am I looking at has a lot to do with how I kind of see it at the moment. Yeah.
If you could go back 2 to 3 years, is there any advice you would give yourself? Anything you would do different?
I would have quit my job earlier. I think I would have come to a point that, I would have just said, you know what, this is not worth it anymore. I'll figure something else out if I needed to still make money or whatever it was. But it's like, I think I worked too long. Mm-hmm.
What she said.
Yeah.
But probably for different reasons. Yeah. I had a lot of fear and anxiety about finances working out, about leaving work, being unemployed. And I guess I was not a lot of trust issues with the business and just the economy as a whole. And things have worked out really well. And it's taken some, things aren't always rosy with the business and things aren't always going great, but I wish I'd had more kind of faith in, that was the first business I'd started and first entrepreneurship kind of stuff I've really done. And so I wish I'd had more faith in that it just all kind of can work out and that we'd be happy at the lifestyle that we've kind of come to.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know you guys have been traveling a lot and you got more coming up. Yeah. Where have you gone since you retired?
I think the first big trip was Oaxaca, Mexico. We spent 3 weeks down there, which...
And I was actually still working at the time.
Yeah. So I'd quit and I was like, woo, and I didn't have to worry about making money, right? So it was like, it was good. So that was kind of our first trip, and that was 3 weeks, which we actually liked that slower. We were in one spot, that's kind of slower pace, I think was a good fit for us. And then that was kind of one big trip. And then a lot of visiting family. We both have family that are out of state. So spending more time, our parents are getting older. So it's just, that's been great to be able to spend more time and help them. So a lot of that kind of traveling was last year, really. And then this trip to Colorado this year.
Went to Hawaii earlier this year.
Oh, that's right.
A lot with COVID, we had thought that we would more just stay domestic and not do international travel. And so we've done this trip, but we've got some international travel coming up that we're looking at. And
so, we actually last year we were like, we're not doing any international travel, forget that. And now we're like, it's almost the bulk of what we're kind of looking at kind of going forward. This year I kind of coined it the year of the snow globe, almost just like you shake it up a little bit. And travel is kind of the piece that we're sort of trying to shake up. That we went to Hawaii earlier this year on more of a kind of traditional vacation style. It was great. It was fine, but we're like, it was a lot of money for, so we're trying to evaluate like what we're going to do. We're, this type of a trip, more of a road trip, has been good. Pet sitting. We've actually enjoyed that. The bouncing around a lot is disruptive. It's a little hard to kind of get settled in new places. But again, we're trying to experiment and see, do we want to do more of this or not? We have a trip we're going to go to Chautauqua in Bogota, Colombia, in September.
I think that's for like a week, yeah.
For the first week. And then our plan is, if everything kind of goes well, is to go then to Portugal for at least 3 to 6 weeks. There's a digital nomad group that's gathering there that we thought, it'd be kind of interesting. Let's maybe go hang out with the digital nomad group for a little bit and see what that's about.
And she really wants to walk the part of the Camino. Have you guys heard of the Camino Santiago?
It's basically the Portugal route, which is 125 miles versus the 500-mile trek. Let's start. We need to train.
Start
we need
small.
to train a little bit more for that. And that's kind of at that point. That's sort of we're not homeless, but we don't have a place to go back to right now.
I don't know if we mentioned we had been Airbnb-ing the place, and then we now are doing a longer term rental for 3 months with an option to kind of extend 1 or 2 months. So
we don't have a place to go back to at this point. So we're kind of, we'll bounce around a little bit and stay with some family and do some pet sits and.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, will you just try to find pet sits and other stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of what we're trying to do this year is be more flexible, more adaptable. We came from that corporate background, plan everything out to, and have everything be as known as it can be. And so, any combination of pet sits, Airbnbs, staying with family and friends. You want to try some of you found a couple other opportunities. What's the woofing one? And
there's the
worldwide organic
farming. There's a couple different groups.
Workaway, I think, is another one. There's some really interesting groups, which a lot of it depends on how the COVID variants and things go. But we may just stay longer in Europe and bounce around. Or
sure.
So,
have you all been to Portugal before?
No, it's first trip, and we're going to Porto is the location that we'll end up settling for a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your experiences. Mitty and I are actually working on getting a golden passport, whatever that is, so we can get EU citizenship.
Oh, yeah.
If you invest a certain amount of money into Portugal, I think right now it's 360,000 euros, which translates into buying a house there in certain areas.
Right.
You can eventually get an EU passport, which would be pretty cool. So, yeah.
We've heard of a number of people who want to move there, and Jen has a girlfriend who
she's a flight attendant right now, and so she's gotten her basically her residency, so she's there kind of permanently. She's still doing some work, but we agree, we're looking for some increased flexibility in the future of being able to stay in places longer. I like the golden passport, or I'm half Italian, and so I'm like, maybe there's a way to get in through that way as well, so we'll see.
Nice. Yeah. How much planning do you do for a trip? And before you answer, I should say this is something I struggled with before, because we'd go on these little trips and I'd have like every hour planned out. It makes for a suboptimal experience. How do y'all do it?
We were probably more that way, during our working experience. I think even on our trip out, when we were driving out and we had our kind of whole COVID scare, I mean, if I was in a job and I had my 2-week vacation or something like that, I think that...
And everything's scheduled.
Scheduled. That would have really have ruined kind of that experience. And now it's like, okay, you'd be flexible about it. So we've been trying not to do a lot of the planning and kind of be a little bit more flexible, open, see what happens, what opportunities come. Our trip for Europe, and basically we've got our one-way ticket to Bogota booked, and that's it. That's all we've got booked at this point. So I kind of like this idea of having this open-ended, because who knows, maybe we meet interesting people when we're in Portugal and they are going to go and do something else. It's like, that would be nice to be able to take advantage of those opportunities.
It is we had another pet sit we were looking at, trying to see if we could stay out in Colorado longer, and that kind of fell through. And so we're kind of looking at opportunities, but the not planning does have a lot more juggling of things. It's like, oh, well, maybe we'll stay here with these friends or go up and see this town or city. And so there's a lot more. You were getting pretty tired the other night when we were like going over options of trying to how everything could slot into place. But we're definitely trying to, just be more flexible, more adaptable, and roll with the punches. Mm-hmm. I think with things that are going on, the economy and COVID and inflation, and so maybe some good lessons for us to learn here to be more flexible.
So I think we covered some of the other travel stuff that I was going to ask. So let's just move on to the pet sitting and house sitting kind of stuff. Can you talk about the pros and cons and maybe how you got into it in the first place?
Sure. We've gone through the platform primarily on the Trusted House Sitter platform. It's been great. It's, I guess, sort of Airbnb-ish kind of, where you set up your profile, you apply for pet sits, and then you get reviews after. So there's a lot of kind of social proof in that. So,
which she had a great kind of plan initially. She when we were still living at our place, you started signing up for local pet sits, and we would just go do them on a weekend or go down and kind of like a mini staycation around us. And during that time you were building up your profile and getting to know people, see if we liked the platform.
And we've met some pretty amazing people. I mean, we've been very fortunate with all the pets that we've sat for so far. And and a lot of it was multiple, since it was local. They're like, oh, great, you guys live down the street. You want to come back? So it's like, 2 or 3 pet sits for the same people. We knew the animals at that point. So that's been actually really, really good.
And Jen often ends up making friends because she's the primary one kind of coordinating things and interacting with them. But you've been making friends. We've gone to dinner with some people and gone down multiple times just even to,
hang out with their pets because they got cool pets. Yeah, it's been fun. But yeah, it's been a good experience. We lost our dog a couple of years back, so it was a nice way to kind of have that pet energy and be around animals. But it's almost like being grandparents, right? You're like, oh yeah, play with it, and then you give them back.
Get them wild and crazy, give them back.
I was going to say, don't keep the rat out of the pants. Again, listen to the end for that story.
Well, and I was going to say, you are, we mentioned it before, but you're sitting some, cats, but there's also rats that live there too. So people can listen to that. Are there other animals that were like unusual, like not dogs and cats?
So we did one pet sit up in Oregon, and they had a Mexican street dog. Turned out to be just a wonderful dog.
Amazing.
And so Jen, when she was telling me about this, she goes, because we're going to see my family up in Washington, and it's like on the way up in Portland, we'll go do this pet sit. She goes, they've got one dog, he's Mexican street dog, kind of large, but be fine. And they've got a Komodo dragon. I was like, because I've seen the nature things where they show like an island and this big like crocodile thing killing deer, and so I don't think it's probably a Komodo dragon. Turned out it was just a bearded dragon, which are much smaller and legal, and non-lethal.
So that was kind of our most exotic, other than the current ones that are 2 rats. But dogs and cats.
We have them. Probably the most interesting venue we did is we sat a couple different times. We went back. We sat a border collie and a chihuahua on a 42-foot trawler in a marina.
A boat.
And it was actually wonderful. It was really interesting.
We had fun. It was, the space is much more, contained, small, but we had a good time. I'm like, have cocktails up on the deck and, hang out. You're meeting people in the marina.
Yeah.
It was really fun. We live in a really small condo in Pasadena, and it was amazing. And I think after the first time when we came back, we're like, I come home and I'm like, oh my gosh, our place is huge. Like, it's all relative, right? It was just like, it was amazing.
And then other people's houses are so large. I'm like, I'm getting tired walking from the bedroom to the, it's like, but at least I'm getting all my steps in for the day and exercise. So.
That would have been great if it was a Komodo dragon. Right? you might not have come back alive, but...
All right, he gets 1 deer a day. You throw him in I don't know.
Crazy.
Yeah, let's talk about your blog a little bit. You started a blog. What's it called, and why did you start it?
I started, the name of the blog is PostFi Life, so postfilife.com. I started... Basically, last year I met Joel from 5 a.m. Joel, and who was also blogging at Budgets Are Sexy when we were in Oaxaca. I was chatting with him. And he's like, "Oh, you should like write a guest blog post." I'm like, maybe, And then I finally kind of last year I was like, okay, sure, I'll give that a go. And I actually wrote about the no income for a year. I called it the Nifty Project. And so I wrote that, and then he's like, "Oh, you should just start a blog." And I'm like, maybe, right? So I kind of, at that point, then decided earlier this year that...
you like taking on new challenges and trying...
Right. Like, I like to learn new things, and so I thought, all right, maybe this is just a challenge to do that. So really the reason was to learn, to challenge myself. I'd never set up a website or a blog before, so it was just, why not try that? I'm learning how to use Fiverr. Like, I used Fiverr to have somebody create a logo, just trying, experimenting with different things. So yeah, I started just blogging, and one of the kind of themes that I guess I kind of came up with is the women that were in Oaxaca with us. We had kind of a mini mastermind group last year where every couple of weeks we'd get on a call together. And one of, at the beginning of this year, we did like a vision board party which is basically sitting down and you create, like, you go to magazines and you tear out a bunch of stuff and put up pictures and sayings. And so I ended up with, I think, 52 sayings or quotes from that vision board. And
That really spoke to you, or you
that spoke
found
to me,
you
yeah.
really were
And
interested.
I've been writing about those quotes. Is kind of how I looked at it, because I'm like, obviously they spoke. There was a reason why I wanted them on my vision board, so why not write about them? So I've been kind of slowly going through all the different sayings and writing about it. So I haven't been writing probably as frequently as maybe I'd like, but I'm like, it's okay. I don't need to crank out a post once a week
Need
or
a
whatever.
production schedule.
I know, exactly. So I'm like, okay, I'll write what I feel like writing. So,
And it sounds like you were doing things that you hadn't done before. Any things that you haven't mentioned that you learned, maybe like just writing the content, has that been natural for you? Or
I'm not a natural writer. Like, that's not my tendency, even though writing appraisal reports was, I wrote a lot of them. But I think for me, I started doing a little bit of journaling when we were in Oaxaca. And I think I journaled for about 100 days, which, again, I haven't really journaled, over my lifetime. But it was helpful. It was therapeutic. It was almost a way to process kind of not working and what I'm doing and what's next. It was a way to document. I think the blogging is similar to that. It's not the same as just writing in a journal and anything, because now I've got a topic. It's more structured, but I think it's been good. It's helped me kind of process, what's my, post-FI life like? What's life after financial independence? What's next? So I think for me, it's been good. So I'll at least continue.
Because in the past, you had always been a lot more kind of external, focused on accomplishing and doing things, right? So this kind of was a way to do some introspection that's still...
Self-reflection, I think, has been what I've needed.
Cool. Tell us about some cool content that's coming up.
Let's see. I've got probably my next post that I'll do is it was a
terrorist
quote.
Cats.
No. Yeah. We'll see. I've got a post on Colorado. Probably this trip will be a good one. There was a quote that I pulled from that. I just recently wrote one on Wonder Woman, which was interesting. Like, there was a picture of, Wonder Woman, the Linda Carter Wonder Woman era. But, and that was kind of an interesting, just being home with my mom, and my mom basically saying, like, I'm not Wonder Woman anymore. I'm like, you're 80. Like, you don't need to do it all. Like, so just some of that kind of stuff. I'm basically kind of working through my list from my vision board. So a little bit, it's like, what speaks to me? Like, what's the next quote that I need to kind of dive into a little bit more? So I'm not quite sure. Probably my Colorado post, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Okay. I have an idea for you, and this might be if you want to do a YouTube channel coming up, but I think this would be great. Even if you don't want to do a channel, you can take the video and embed it in the blog. And this post would be called "Scott Has Rats in the Pants." Again, listen to the end, but the gist of this is these rats like to go down people's shirts. And if they like to do that, I suspect they like to go down pants too. I don't think Scott would approve, but do it for the blog, Scott. This could go viral.
That's
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Maybe you could come over and help us with this, Carl.
oh man, that's insane. I think Carl and I should work on a vision board for MHFi.
Ooh.
Would you do rats in the pants? Take one for the team?
Anything in my pants, yeah. As long as it's moving fast and has teeth. I don't know what that means.
Well, there's that whole ferreting thing that the Irish do, isn't there? They you tie the bottoms of your pants off and drop a ferret and see who can stand around the longest. You're gonna have to Google it.
Who comes up with this? I mean, alcohol is obviously involved.
Clearly,
a sober person would be like, "Hey, let's
drop a ferret in your pants."
Yeah, let's put this thing with teeth, with rodent in our pants, and trap it in there.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, that weird little furless tail is the least of your worries.
Yeah.
You know?
I prefer furry tails.
Okay, as we're coming towards the end here, I think we could just jump to the end if that's cool with everybody. What does a perfect day look like for each of you? I hope it lines up a little bit, but you can answer separately or together if you want.
Perfect day. Right now, I think spending time, I guess, trying a bunch of different stuff. I guess for me, traveling. So getting up in the morning, sleeping in for sure. I would like to do some exercise. I've been doing Pilates, so more movement in my day. Good meal, good food is always kind of a good thing. We like to cook, and kind of hanging out with Scott. We love spending time together. Yeah.
Oh,
Aw.
that's an interesting question. My life's been so structured and rigid. I've had working in operations and forever. And a lot of it's just been controlled by the schedule of others and the demands of others, that I think my perfect day is just not having any requirements, any demands on me. So being able to sleep until whenever I want or get up early. Really just being able to kind of spontaneously go do whatever. And really just having
Less
it open for exploration and adventure right now, because it's so kind of counter to how I've been all my life. And so, and spending time with Jen.
We can do that too. Of course, yeah.
Very good. Any other questions, Carl?
No, I noticed the perfect day did not involve rats in any.
No.
Not in any
no.
format. No.
No alcohol either. I'm surprised on that.
Well, that's the
You gotta throw it
spontaneous
in.
part.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I feel
It
like
leaves it
that.
open.
We got to go to a brewery.
It completely leaves it open.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank
you.
Tell us
Thank
the
you.
blog. Again, what's the URL?
URL is postfilife.com.
All right. So we'll link that up. And are you guys on other social media or anything else?
Not so much. Yeah.
Cool.
It's mostly through there. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. And we'll see you soon.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show. That was the Mile High 5 podcast, and I'm Doug Cunnington, the balder host, and Carl Jensen is the cool, sexy one. If you dig the show, please do 3 things for us. Number 1, tell a friend, a family member, an enemy about the show. We really don't care who you tell. Maybe forward them a specific show that you know that they will like. It's the single most helpful thing that you can do to spread the word. It's like giving us a virtual high five, and actually we don't give high fives in person, so the virtual kind's pretty good. And more importantly, your friend or family member or even your enemy will appreciate the fact that you were thinking of them. Number 2, make sure you're following or subscribed on your podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, whatever you're using, and that way you won't miss a show. And number 3, please leave us a rating and review. We read them on the show occasionally, and you might hear yours out there on an upcoming episode. Quick disclaimer, this show is not financial or legal advice. I'd actually be surprised if it sounded like it. It's really just for entertainment, and that's at least what we're hoping for. But seriously, get advice from professionals. Carl and I are just 2 guys with microphones that sit in my basement and talk. So we'll catch y'all next week. Carl, are you a fan of rats?
It depends. If you're walking around New York City and you see one on top of the trash, like looking at you while it's eating a 2-week-old hot dog, you think it's disgusting and that's a vile animal. But it turns out that rats are very personable and I think somewhat intelligent creatures. They like to be handled. So I guess I'm a fan of pet rats, but perhaps not a fan of the New York City sewer rats.
What about you, Scott?
I'm not, I don't like rats.
I was going to say, you're not a fan.
Pretty much. Like, their tail reminds me of a snake, and they just kind of give me the heebie-jeebies.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And interesting, right? You guys are interacting with some rats currently. So have you held one? Do you feed them? Like, what's your level of interaction with the rats?
So I've gone in and just briefly petted one, but feeding
been-
the rats and the
I've been the caretaker of the rats.
morning routine has been
No,
up
and
to
they
Jen.
are actually, they're very sweet. They're very curious. They have cute little whiskers and stuff. So they're actually, when you look at them face on, they're fun.
Yeah.
And then it's the tail. So, yeah. But yeah, no, they're actually very sweet animals.
We saw a chipmunk the other day. We went up to Rocky Mountain National Park,
Yeah.
and there was a very cute chipmunk, and they have furry tails, and so that's very cute.
Oh, yeah. You know what? That makes a big difference.
It really does.
It does.
That nude tail.
Yeah,
So it looks
which possums have also.
weird.
Possum are gross.
Yeah, those are not good either. And then they're out there playing dead.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And then how much have you been playing with the rats?
Daily, I try to pick them up at least once a day
Okay.
and cuddle with them a little bit and just kind of, they like to be burrowed and like snuggled. So they want to go down your shirt. And I'm not quite ready for that. But
Okay.
yeah, it's been actually pretty good.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to play with them too much. My younger sister had a pet mouse, which, it's just like a little rat, sort of. And is it like a white rat? What do you guys have?
It's like white and brown, but one of them's...
They're like Appaloosa, kind of like.
Yeah.
Because they're basically...
But it's a pretty good-sized rat.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah.
It's a lot of meat on there.
About a pound of hamburgers.
One of them's a little bit bigger than the other. Yeah.
Okay. Gross.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good sound check.